Hey, what's going on, everyone? It's Kyle Henderson and Andrew Bone. Today, we're talking about Alabama's newest commitment, Kadarius Calloway, here with Andrew Bone to break it all down. Bone, commitment number 11 is in for the Crimson Tide. Talk about Kadarius Calloway and what it means for this recruiting class.
We'll talk about an unexpected commitment. It's kind of funny. Last week on Bama Insider, we were all talking about who's going to be the next commitment, and I threw out there. I said I'm kind of waiting on the kid who surprises us all. The guy that nobody's talking about. I keep waiting on that name to drop, and it dropped on Wednesday night. And I will have to admit to our Alabama fan base that I was not expecting that one. I was expecting a random off the wall commitment at some point during this recruiting cycle, but I don't think I was expecting Kadarius Calloway. He's a guy that we talked about a little bit early in May. He picked up an offer kind of late. I think he's probably one of those guys that Alabama wanted to see in camp, but once the NCAA dead period got extended and summer camps were canceled, Alabama kind of said, all right, here are the guys that we were going to bring to camp. We're going to work them out and then decide if we wanted them. These are the guys that we want to definitely go ahead and offer. And he was one of those guys. And, a tremendous athlete, had a great junior season. I mean, this kid had over 1,000 all-purpose yards, 974 of those yards receiving during his junior season. And then he had 11 interceptions on defense. I mean, a lot of defensive backs don't have 11 interceptions in their entire high school career, and he had it all in one season. So, tremendous athlete. He's about 6'1", a little bit over 200 pounds. Everybody keeps saying, well, if he's over 200 pounds, he's definitely going to play safety. That's not necessarily the case. I think he's got the athletic ability to play corner, position he plays in high school. So why not try him out at once he gets to Alabama at the cornerback position? So I think Alabama's going to try him out at both positions. We've seen so many talented defensive backs that they've signed through the years, guys that have come in and started out at safety, moved to corner, started out at corner, and moved to safety. I think this is probably going to be one of those situations where Alabama's just going to have to wait and see how well he performs at both positions before making a final decision in that regard. So let's just call him a defensive back athlete right now. But I really like this pickup for Alabama. He's a 3-star recruit. Second 3-star defensive back commitment for Alabama. They flipped in the last 10 days, but both of these guys seem like very elite players, very underrated in my opinion. Talking to Rivals.com national recruiting director Mike Farrell about both of these guys, Devontae Smith and Kadarius Calloway over the last week. Certainly sounds like both are going to move up tremendously in the recruiting rankings, especially Devontae Smith. I think people are very high on him. It's kind of weird. Mississippi, for some reason, I've covered recruiting for 17 years. Mississippi seems like they're always the last state that gets appropriately ranked. And I don't think that's necessarily I wouldn't say that's necessarily a bad thing in terms of the recruiting analysts. I think it's just tough to get over to Mississippi and see a lot of kids when you're, going to Alabama and Georgia or Tennessee, as much as you do during the season. You can only see maybe a few kids in the state of Mississippi. And for some reason, a lot of these Mississippi guys don't usually go to camps during the spring. And, there weren't camps this year, but in the past, you'd never really see a lot of Mississippi kids that going to camp. So that's kind of why they get evaluated a little bit later on in the process. We usually see them at the Alabama-Mississippi All-Star game, and they're lights out. And then they go to the an Under Armour or an All-American game in San Antonio and perform extremely well. So that's kind of the first time or two that national recruiting or national or regional recruiting analysts get a chance to see these guys. So I think once Kadarius Calloway gets seen a little bit more, by the regional and national guys, feeling his stock will continue to soar. And just by watching his film, I mean, you can tell he's a very talented player and somebody that is an Alabama caliber kid.
Well, let's talk about the recruitment of Kadarius Calloway. Freddie Roach, this was one of his, pickups in the class of 2021. Carl Scott also excited both those guys on social media, had, their little strong arms up there, for the recruitment. Talk about Freddie Roach and just kind of the job that he did with Kadarius Calloway and what you think overall that Freddie Roach is going to add to the coaching staff, because he's new to the staff, but in terms of the recruitment, this is one of his earliest commitments to the class of 2021.
Yeah, Freddie Roach, former Alabama linebacker, was a high-level recruit coming out of high school. I mean, certainly a guy that understands, the recruiting process really well and develops a tremendous amount of relationships with these guys. I mean, he's still relatively young. He's a young coach that did a tremendous job recruiting over at Ole Miss, and Alabama hired him. Not only because of his coaching abilities, a great coach, but also a great recruiter. And this is kind of his first big home run hit right here, flipping Kadarius Calloway away from Mississippi State. He's kind of been all over him, and I keep hearing his name getting brought up. Several defensive linemen that Alabama's recruiting continue to mention him, especially Mason Smith, the number one defensive tackle in the country, came out the other day and just talked about how good of a relationship he's built with Freddie Roach, and had that relationship from before Freddie came to Alabama. So Freddie recruited him while he was at Ole Miss too. So I definitely think that he's doing a tremendous job. And if he could potentially pull off somebody like Mason Smith, I mean, that would be an incredible feat for him. So we'll see what happens over the course of the next few months. Some other guys that they're recruiting still. Luke Altmaier, another guy in Mississippi who Freddie is in charge of recruiting, who's currently committed to Florida State. If he could get another flip from the state of Mississippi, I think Alabama fans would be extremely happy.
Bone, kind of wrapping up right now, talk about some other defensive back targets that Alabama is actively recruiting. We talked about the fact that Alabama now has Kadarius Calloway, the fact that Alabama has Kane Williams, the fact that Alabama has Devontae Smith, who are some other guys who will be recruited in the defensive back area as we move forward.
Yeah, I think, when you see somebody commit, and especially a third defensive back commit, people start to automatically think, all right, well, who's going to fall out? Who doesn't have a spot anymore? Well, people still have spots because nobody else is committed just yet. You don't say, all right, we're going to quit recruiting this guy, or we're going to stop, pursuing this guy. You got to continue to recruit all these guys like, they're not, even the guys that are committed, you got to recruit them like they're not committed, like they are committed. So, I think I screwed that up, but you got to recruit these guys as if they're not committed if they are still committed. That's how I wanted to say it. But, I think Alabama is certainly sitting in a good place right now in terms of their overall defensive back class. I mean, you got Devontae Smith and Kadarius Calloway, two guys who, maybe play, maybe they both are corners. Maybe they're both safeties. Maybe one's a corner, maybe one's a safety. I don't think we know for sure which position either one's going to play for certain just yet. I think we won't know that until they get to campus. But in my opinion, I think I do think that Kadarius Calloway is probably going to end up maybe a safety. Could play corner, but I think he's going to probably play in safety. Devontae Smith, in my opinion, probably going to be a corner. Kane Williams, in my opinion, probably going to grow into a linebacker. I mean, 6'2", 215 pounds right now. Maybe he stays at safety, but let's just say he's somewhere in between a safety and linebacker. So, still trying to recruit some top-level guys. All the guys remain the same. Jason Marshall, out of Palmetto High School down in Miami. Kool-Aid, JaQuincy McKinstry, number one player in the state of Alabama out of Pinson Valley. Sage Ryan, Jordan Gilbert, two elite guys from the state of Louisiana. Kyrie Jackson, another guy that Alabama is extremely high on at a junior college. Could potentially be the next commitment for Alabama. He's certainly a guy that we felt like would commit here pretty soon. Obviously there's still some other guys that are out there that are committed elsewhere that I think Alabama's still pursuing. Latrell McCutcheon, former Alabama commitment who just committed to Oklahoma. I still think Alabama's going to continue to recruit him. Jordan Hancock, committed to Clemson over Alabama in the spring. I think there's still some good communication going on there. But, as we know with Clemson, you basically have to decommit in order to take some visits. Could potentially see that happening. Could potentially see him decommitting, and because Ohio State and Alabama coming after him very hard, and I think he still wants to take some visits and enjoy the process. So we'll see kind of what happens with him moving forward. But there's still a lot of names that are out there, and I think Alabama is in great position in terms of defensive backs, and it kind of gives them a little bit of breathing room. So let's say Alabama does miss on one or two of these guys. They still got some other guys that they could potentially land that they still really like. Terrion Arnold, another guy that I failed to mention. He's still, very high on Alabama's, wish list. And, they would love to add him, but I don't see him making a decision anytime soon. I think he's going to kind of enjoy the process and take some visits this fall before deciding. But having, the defensive backs they have committed right now, the guys that are still out there, Alabama's got to feel great about their situation at defensive back, regardless if they miss on a guy or two here in the coming months.
For more recruiting coverage, go to BamaInsider.com. He's Andrew Bone. I'm Kyle Henderson. The newest commit is Kadarius Calloway. Read more about him at BamaInsider.com and stay tuned for the next commitment right here on BamaInsider.com.